Hey everyone, thanks for joining us this week. We are going to be in our second week of our margin series. I'm excited about this series. I've talked to some of our members throughout the week, and they've told me about how it's got them thinking about how to create a little bit of margin in their lives. But as we go into the second week, we're going to be focusing on silence and solitude. Silence and solitude. In this series, we're actually talking about how it is good to sometimes slow down and do a little less. We are all moving fast. Talk to someone, anyone, they're busy. They have a lot going on. When we get home at night and weekend, it's amazing. We're busy. Our phones, Netflix. We look at our time filler as busyness. We don't actually think about that as ancillary things. Many times we're busy doing nothing. The statement for the margin series is this: building space in our lives for God to move. You could also say margin is the space we build into our life for God to work, or the space between our current pace and our limits. Between where we are and burnout. You may be high capacity, like the Energizer Bunny. You can just keep going and going and going, and others are low capacity. It's a success just to get out of bed in the morning. We're all wired a little differently. People have a tendency to push and push until you are at your limits. You can't do anymore. You can't function right at this point. I think most adults have reached this point at one time or another. You've taken on too many tasks. You've scheduled too many appointments with your kids. We've all reached that. There's literally not one more thing I can add to my schedule today. There's not one more thing I can put on my calendar. I am too busy. I know that my wife and I have reached that point many, many times in our life. You see, I used to work multiple jobs, pushing to be successful at all of them. I thought I could juggle and keep all the balls in the air. Jobs, church, family, friends, house maintenance, all of this, the little chores of life. I thought that I could juggle them all, and I could just keep them all going. When I didn't really realize that there were balls that would just continue to get dropped. And then I would go to pick the one I dropped up, and then another one would drop. In my head, I thought I was being successful, but in reality, when I turn around and when I see my past and I see how everything was, I see how much of a failure at some of that stuff I really was. In my head, I was great, but in reality, not so much. I was treating everything as a task, a line to cross off. I was trading my margin and the peace and joy that comes from walking with God and being present with my family for progress. You see, we've got three statements here of what we trade peace and joy for. First, we trade peace and joy for progress. Getting further for what I think is irrelevant success or irrelevant gains. We are trying to get that next step. That next step. I'm going to grow and grow. Unfortunately, we're not growing in the right areas most of the time. Next is we trade peace and joy for accomplishment. We trade peace and joy for that pat on the back, that promotion. We trade our family time and our God time for worldly success, for worldly gains, for worldly accomplishment. And the next is we trade peace and joy for prosperity, or at least what we seem to think prosperity is and what the world tells us prosperity is. The thing is prosperity is not what we seem to think it is. Prosperity is something completely different. We think of prosperity like the prosperity gospel, health, wealth. It's not what prosperity is. We all know that we need to have margin. Many don't do anything about that, though. I have three things I want to point out that happens to us when there is no margin. Yeah, I'm doing things in kind of series of threes today. When there is no margin, the stress level goes up. Have you ever been late to something? And the later you get, the more anxious you get, the more anxiety there is. I know I've been there. I hate being late. So like if I'm getting to where I'm not going to be there 5 minutes early, I'm already getting anxious. You can't help it sometimes. You can't control traffic. You can't control car failures. But it doesn't stop the anxiousness. All of a sudden the stress builds and your day is ruined many times because of stuff that's out of your control. And then the next thing is, when there is no margin, our focus narrows. Have you ever gone with someone to, like, for us, the Grand Canyon, or I guess you could be, have gone somewhere, a mountain, or, I don't know, shark cages, who knows. And you're with this risk taker. And as this risk taker is getting closer and closer to the edge, your focus narrows. All of a sudden you're at this giant, beautiful place, and everything is creeping in on your vision. You're no longer noticing the canyon. You're no longer noticing any of the beautiful landscape. You're no longer noticing all the people around you. You focus in, and all of a sudden, all you can see is where their feet are. How far are they leaning over the edge? What is going on with them? Everything else disappears because that stress level goes up and everything focuses in on this thing that is going on. Well, that's with life. When there is no margin, our focus narrows to what we're stressed about. We're not getting to see the big picture. And then the third thing is, when there is no margin, our relationships suffer. The closer we are to our limits, the more we lose track of the fact that I'm a child of God and need to spend time with Him. We lose sight of the fact that we need to spend time with our spouse and our kids. We should want to know what our kids are doing, what's going on in their lives, what they're having for lunch, who their friends are. We lose track of all of that when we don't have margin. Our family often feels the brunt of our busyness. If you're a parent, I get it. The battle is real. There are seasons of life where you have to push to the limits. That does not mean you don't evaluate and make changes as you can, where you can. Take it from a guy who just went to the hospital with heart issues. I could eat and eat and eat. I still have a want to just eat. But I didn't quite know. Well, I knew, but it didn't matter to me of what was damaging me. I was busy just enjoying what I enjoyed. I didn't pay attention to the nutritional value of anything. Now looking back, and I see how I've eaten, I've seen how I've treated my body, I'm ashamed a little bit of how and what I did. I'm in the progress of trying to change my diet habits and on medication, and I'm trying to lower my weight and trying to get things better inside me, and I think I'm making a lot of great steps towards that. But the same can go for our time with God and family. You go and you go and you go and you finally reach a destination and you turn around, and what do you see? A collection of poor choices that you made. You see, it is easy to make choices. It is easy to choose your way away from God and your family. Pursuing worldly success, pursuing worldly gains. It is easy for all of that to happen. So, let me just be honest. I don't have a magic bullet. I don't have a cure-all for putting margin into our lives. but we're going to take some time and hone in on some steps to get better. So let's get talking about solitude and silence, which is our focus today, really. It is something that needs to be put into our schedule. It's not something that you fall into, that you just get miraculously someday. You need to schedule it. You need to make it a priority. One of your priorities. One of your many priorities. You have God, you have your spouse, you have your family, and you need to schedule margin. So when you're scheduling this time, this needs to be time where you put your tech away. I just pulled this out of my pocket. You put your tech away. You find a quiet place. For just a few moments, you stop striving to accomplish all of those tasks. You live in the margin of life. Be still. Let nothing happen for just a little bit. For some of us, this sounds like heaven. If you have screaming kids around you all the time, I'm sure this sounds like heaven. For others, this is torture. I know people who cannot stand to be still. My cousin Bobby is that way. That man, if he's not sleeping, he's moving. Love the dude to death. We're wired a little differently, depending on how you're wired. Either way, silence and solitude is needed. One author says this: in solitude and silence, you're learning to stop doing, stop producing, stop pleasing people, stop entertaining yourself, stop obsessing, stop doing anything except to simply be your naked self before God and be found by Him. That's author Bill Gautry. I think I said that right. You see, Jesus modeled this, and bear with me, we're going to be moving quick through some scripture here real quick. Jesus modeled this. In Matthew chapter 14, verses 22 through 23, the feeding of the 5,000 had just occurred, and then Jesus goes and does this. Immediately he made the disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him to the other side, while he did dismiss the crowds. After dismissing the crowds, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. Well into the night, he was there alone. He was at he preached, he taught, and then he got alone. He made time for silence and solitude. This is something we're supposed to be doing. Jesus, again, is modeling this. Let's get to the next one. Mark 1:35. The people are watching Jesus and seeing exactly what he was doing. Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, he got up, went out, and made his way to a deserted place, and there he was praying. Again, he got away to a quiet place, and he was praying. We are supposed to be modeling our lives after Christ. Supposed to be trying to be as Christ-like as we possibly can if we're Christian. If you're not Christian today and you don't even know what that means, let me just explain that to you real fast. You see, Jesus Christ came to this earth. God, the Father, sent him down here so that he could live a perfect sinless life, so he could be a perfect sinless sacrifice for us. He was tortured and put on a cross, murdered as a sacrifice, put into a tomb, and 3 days later he rose again. He conquered death for us so that we can have the ability to have a relationship with God. Imagine that he loves us so much that he did that. So if you don't know what being Christian looks like, please, at the end of this video, there will be an email. Email me. I would love to talk to you more about it, and I would love to maybe schedule a meeting with you so that we can dive deeper into that. But let's move on. Luke 5:15 through 16. Jesus had just healed the leper and asked him to not tell people, but that didn't stop the word from getting around. Let's read. But the news about him spread even more, and large crowds would come together to hear him and to be healed of their sicknesses. Yet he often withdrew to deserted places and prayed. Yeah, I think they're watching him and they're writing this about Jesus. They all we've been in Mark and Luke so far and Matthew. They all noticed what Jesus did. He went and got quiet time. Does our family notice that we get quiet time? Are we showing the importance of margin in our lives? And then jump down to Luke 6:12. Jesus just had a confrontation with the Pharisees about healing on the Sabbath. During those days, he went out to the mountain to pray and spent all night in prayer to God. Luke 6:12. Think about that. He went out to the mountain and spent all night in prayer to God. He didn't just schedule time with God. He found it anywhere and everywhere he could. And he valued that time. He valued that alone time with God. Don't make margin just another box to check off. Make margin a priority, an intimate time with God, and a place to gather your thoughts that are guided by what he's impressing on your heart. Get into his word. Get in time to pray. The movie War Room did great at illustrating what quiet time could look like. If you really want a visual, I strongly suggest that movie. Then next, Psalms 37:7. Psalm is a great place to get reminders on seeking silence. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. Fret not yourself over the one who prospers in his way. Don't worry about other people. Over the man who carries out evil devices. Don't worry yourself about other people. Don't worry yourself about your neighbor. Don't worry yourself about all of that stuff in the moment. Get in silence and solitude with God. Moments of silence means no distractions, no phone, TV, Facebook, Instagram, drama, whatever you want to think about. Just be in silence, quiet, and vulnerable and broken before God. Find that margin. This time is supposed to be my speaking time where I'm supposed to be in silence and solitude, me and the camera, so that I can present this. Every now and then you're going to see like a break, and that's because I have children and they don't understand what silence and solitude is supposed to be. Because I have to cut a little clip out of them opening the door and staring at me or something like that so that I can get this to you. So bear with me sometimes. But I get that silence and solitude is hard. But you need to do your best at putting the distractions away and just focusing on God and focusing on that rest of having silence and solitude with him. Again, for some of us, this is easy. And for others of us, this is very hard. We're just go-getters. How easy it is for you doesn't change the need for you. If it's easy, great. If it's hard, sorry, you still need it. My challenge to you is this. For 3 minutes after this video, turn your phone off. If you can't turn your phone off, put it in another room. Ask your kids to all go to their rooms for a minute if you have children. You and your spouse or you and whoever you're with, separate. We're just going to try 3 minutes to start. Get rid of all the distractions and sit in silence with God. And then let that 3 minutes grow. Because as you get that 3 minutes, you're going to find out what that can do for you, and let that grow and mature. Let that 3 minutes turn to 5 minutes, to 10 minutes, to 30 minutes, to an hour, as you make it a priority and you see the benefit in your life. We all need margin. We all need that 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 space in our lives for God to move. Thank you for being with us this week. We'll be back next week with the third part of this series. As we're starting to gear towards Easter, we will be throwing some things up on our Facebook page for some things that we're going to be doing. Ask you just to continue checking us out and keep up to date with what's going on. I'm glad that you've joined us, and hopefully you will see us next week. Later.